This is a big one. Yeah, episode 2. We got some news. I'm going to just jump straight into it. Yeah, Now Until Up, that's the name of the show. But I got to just go straight into the meat and potatoes of this thing. My guy, David Magida, just won the High Rocks North American Championship. This is a big deal. Uh, if you follow fitness racing, specifically hybrid fitness racing, you know that David talks a lot, and he is going to be talking so much trash. He's going to have so much to say, whether it be online or offline, because he just proved all the doubters wrong. And the guy's been consistent. I met him back in 2021 in Dallas. It was my first High Rocks. I believe it was his, but he came from the Spartan space, so he was already known in the racing space amongst the elites. It was already a respected athlete, but he finally made it to the top of the podium at a championship level race. He's won individual races and come in first place, which is huge in itself, but his consistency, it just, here we are. The guy did it, and I'm proud of him. Full disclosure, I do train at his studio in DC, and it is the premier, hybrid fitness training location, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot from the guy. It's good to see him put in the work. The only thing is when it's not one of these types of open championship Elite 15 things, we're in the same age group up until next year. But I'm competing with the guy, and the guy's way faster than me. But again, I just want to say I'm proud of him, and this is a big deal. So Now Until Up, here we go. We got that. We got that out there. I definitely want to get the guy Magida on a show. He already knows about this show that I'm starting. But I like to do face-to-face interviews. I did have a podcast a few years back, and it was primarily face-to-face. I may get into the Zoom thing. Obviously, logistics matter. But anyway, let's get into the next person on the list. We got Dylan Scott, United States reps again for the second place. So we got Magida in first place and Dylan Scott, two U.S. Representatives. Dylan Scott is the future. He's the future of the sport. He's dedicated. He's young, and he's just going to go up from here. And it's good to see this guy do his thing. I saw him at my last race. My race didn't go that well, but he was out there. I remember running, struggling on the course, and he was like, "Come on, Vic, let's go." But it's good. It's good to see these guys out here at the championship level on the podium. And then you have Michael Sandbach. Hopefully I said your name right. No disrespect. I did meet Michael when I went to London last year to race. I flew over there with Magida, and cool guy, very smart individual. Believe he's some type of engineer outside of racing. So congrats to him. And I mean, there's other people. I'm not going to go down the list. This isn't, ESPN. But let me shout out the women. We have Michaela Norman from Sweden. She came in first place. We have Megan Jacoby, and we have Lauren Weeks. So Megan Jacoby and Lauren Weeks represent the U.S. And they are so tight in terms of the competition on the women's side. I think that may be more competitive than the men's side. Everybody is fast on the women's side of the house. Obviously, the times are based on the course, but what I see, like Lauren Weeks came in first place at the European Championships, and now she's in third place. But obviously, there's other athletes that are right behind her time, and everybody's close. I want to hear some people in the fitness space talk a little bit about that, on why they think the women are basically, in my opinion, more. I think they're better athletes than a lot of the men. So obviously there's strength levels, there's genetics and whatnot. But like if I was to go pound for pound, I would probably put my money on some of these women, like overall. So, but that was great. So, and we also had the DecaFit, the first race of DecaFit happening earlier that morning, this past weekend, and we have, let's see, Alexandra Walker came in first place, in the elite race. Carrie Nakuda, hopefully I said your name right, and Holly Meyer. And then in the men's side, we had Rylan Shadeg. He came in first place. Nicholas Riker and Anas Zuri. So I did watch both of those races. Yeah, if you have not found the link to those, I will be sharing you the other websites, the other blogs, the other podcasts who basically do the coverage for these races. So make sure you sign up for my email list. I will be sharing those links because those other platforms are definitely helping to keep this sport going and to grow the industry. So yeah, so this was a good weekend. I was hyped up watching these races on my television, stream live on YouTube, and I did have a High Rock simulation the same day as these races at Big Gita's studio. He wasn't there, but shout out to Eric for running that. And for me, I did get hurt back in November after my last race, and this was a good mental thing for me to do a sim. And it wasn't apples to apples. We basically did every station and every run, but every station was 3 minutes and 45 seconds with the 15-second transition, which really is no transition. So, and then the last run, you just ran 1 kilometer no matter what. So it wasn't the 3:45 time cap. It was 1 kilometer, and then the wall balls, you go and do your wall balls. So if you finish in under 3:45, that's great. If it takes you longer than 3:45, it just takes you longer. So it was good. It was good for my confidence to know that I could, I should be ready with my next race in March. I'll be in Dallas in March. So all you 35 to 39-year-olds, just know you'll see me out there in the pro division. All right. So I wanna get into some things that I wrote down, and I don't have a script for this. A lot of this is just a freestyle, but I try to make sure I do have a structure and I'm not just sitting here spitting out random information. I wanted to talk about what is fitness racing, right? There's people who are watching this that have been in the space. They know exactly what it is. And there's people who I'm trying to reach because I want to grow the fitness racing space, right? I'm trying to reach those demographics that maybe are not being touched, right? And here we are. Fitness racing. Fitness racing is an endurance sport. Again, fitness racing is an endurance sport that combines endurance with strength and strength endurance, right? What does that mean? The current fitness race platforms that are out there, High Rocks and DecaFit, those are the two main fitness race companies that are putting together, these large scale events. So you basically are running for half of the race, or we can say for some people maybe 40% to 60%, somewhere in there you're running. To be in fitness racing, you have to run. That does not mean that you have to be the fastest runner, but you do need to be able to be on your feet for an extended period of time. So that is, in my opinion, a baseline factor for what a fitness race is. The second part, we have compromise running. So all of this running is being compromised with some form of strength-based or strength endurance activity, functional fitness activity. Nothing that is in the current, the main two fitness race companies' platforms are highly technical things. It's not CrossFit. CrossFit, you have a lot of gymnastic-based movements. You have um, things that may require more mobility than the average person has. And this isn't one of those things. Anybody can push a sled. Now, whether you can push a heavy sled is a different story. But fitness racing is, you have the running piece, but then you have the compromise running. Um, the way all of these are broken down, so High Rocks is 8 runs, Decafit is 10 runs. Now those runs vary. Decafit, you have uh, 10 500-meter runs. Then they have the Deca Mile, which is like, I don't know what the math is on that, but basically it's a mile divided by 10. So what's that, like 160 meters per run. And then you have High Rocks, which is 8 1-kilometer runs. So that 8 1-kilometer runs, for example, would be 5 miles of total running. The men's pro division, I guess the time that people want is a 90-minute time or less. That is like the baseline where people say, well, you can do pro if you can finish in less than 90 minutes. You do need to be strong to be in a High Rocks. You do need to be strong if you run in the pro division of High Rocks. The sled pull and the sled push is extremely difficult for most people, but it's not impossible. Like, obviously, like, you don't need to be a power lifter to do this. If you look at the field, there are people of different structures and body types. There's like this cutoff, like how much strength do you really need to do any of this stuff? You don't need to be the most powerful person, but you do need a minimum level of strength, depending on what division you decide to be in. In a Decafit, not so much. Nothing really is that heavy in Decafit, in my opinion. It's difficult because you want to get through it fast. It's a very fast race, and it's difficult to go from running into a functional movement and then back into running. But you don't need to necessarily be a power lifter to do any of this stuff. Fitness racing is a long form race. It's not like CrossFit where they're individual smaller events combined. This is just one linear event. It's just, you start and you finish. Whoever crosses the line first is done. CrossFit, you could do one event that might take 12 minutes, you get a score. There's another event that may take 18 minutes, you get a score. You see what I'm saying? It's different. What is a top takeaway that I have from being in the hybrid racing space in the last almost 2 years now? The first thing I'll say is a race will humble you. So you need to manage your ego. Nobody stays on top forever. Based on what I've seen here, you got guys and women who show up and they do great. I've seen people win championships and then they end up coming back and they still may be in the elite ranks, but they're not at the top anymore within one season. Because there's other athletes. You don't have any control over who shows up to that race. And also maybe your training is not in a particular place where you're going to be at your peak. That's okay. But you need to humble yourself and also just realize that you can only be your best. Don't worry about anybody else that shows up. Yeah, you go race if you're out there to compete, but it's hard to really dictate the guy that's going to show up and run a 55-minute High Rocks and then, everybody else is running 59 minutes. It's not but so much that you can do about that. So just go there and run hard. And hopefully you end up in front, but not in front of me. Anyway, yeah, you just got to leave it all out there. Leave it all out there and enjoy the experience. And, you win the race. I'm sure somebody is going to ask you, oh, when's your next race? And you're like, damn, well, I just won this one. Other people are going to be elated, but like people are just getting ready for the next thing. So, just humble yourself and just understand that these races will humble you. Resilience via exposure. So when you do fitness racing, there is a little bit of resilience that you get from being exposed to races every time that you race. I've gotten a little bit faster like at every race, right? I'm not anywhere near my peak in terms of how fast I can be because I know there are certain aspects that I need to work on, specifically running, right? Because I'm just too inconsistent. I can go from a 38-minute total combined runs to like a 43-minute, right, in a matter of a few months. So it's like there's something there. It's like that's too big of a gap. But I still improve my overall race times because I've managed to be resilient when things don't go right or don't go well in a race. So I'm able to adjust in the race. So just the exposure and the reps. The more reps that I get in of racing, the better that I get at racing. So I have a race in Dallas coming up in March. I do not expect that race to be like the best time for me, but I need to get back out there. So because I understand that for me to perform the way that I want to perform in April, I need to have that rep in, that racing. So resiliency is built through exposure. So habits create momentum. You got to put yourself in a position before even showing up to the race to win. It's not that you'll necessarily beat everybody that shows up because you don't know who's going to be there. But if you have good habits, meaning your sleep is on point, you have your diet in line, like you've lined everything up for the race. You've done the deloading. You've done the things that you need to do the day of the race, the morning. Like it's so many different things that you need to do that you may not even really know until you start putting yourself out there and talking to other people. But the consistent thing that I've seen is that when people have good races, it's usually because they followed their plan, right? They laid out the clothes that they were going to wear, the socks they were going to wear. They tried on different shorts. They didn't try on new shorts that they've never worked out in necessarily, but they kept it consistent, and they have those habits that they know if I have a race for the next 2 weeks, I need to kind of have a game plan of how these 2 weeks are going to go, because you don't want to show up and things just fall apart because you just showed up with no thought. So yeah, habits create momentum. The momentum, you want that downhill momentum at the race. So don't mess up the easy part. Your fitness will be what it will be, but you can mess up a race and not even get to realize your fitness because you did not maintain those good habits. Assess, prioritize, and periodize. Be a marksman. You need to adjust as the season goes on. You need to look at, okay, what's working for me? When I do these races, I can look at each individual station and say, wow, I really, really need to work on this. For me, it's been the lunges. My lunges are pretty slow, right, in the running. Lunges and running, those are the two things that I really need to get towards. But I also realize that I'm making these assessments, and then I'm prioritizing what it is that I'm working on, because I can't do everything at the same time. You got your C race, you got your B race, and you got your A race. If you qualify for world championships, obviously that would be your A race. Your C race is just to assess and see where you are. You work on some things, and your B race is like, all right, I'm getting momentum, I'm building things up, and then you tighten up for that A race. So, it's like shooting a rifle. You got your shot group. You look at that, you decide, all right, I need to adjust it this way, and based on that group. So, again, assess, prioritize, and periodize. There are similarities within the athletes at each level, but then there's also clear separating factors when you look at the different levels of athletes. And when I say different levels, I'm going to break that down for you. I think that there are clearly people who we can point out that have been racing for a long time, meaning they've been doing other endurance sports prior to the new wave of hybrid fitness racing, or fitness racing, whatever you want to call it. They have mentally been in a position to race and compete at a high level for years. If you are just jumping into the fitness racing space, You may just be wired to, there's some people who are just wired to compete, and they have this fitness. That's an anomaly. They have the fitness, they're wired to compete, but they've never competed. That's usually not a real person. But there's a few people who are just unreal athletes. But you can learn from these individuals and try to emulate some of the things that have worked for them. And then you also can see things that, maybe the things that work for them aren't what you need. You know what I mean? Because you're coming from a different place. So that is one particular thing that I think stands apart. I think you also have there's a mindset at the start line and during training, but you decide which mindset you're going to have at the start line. You have people who are participating to finish. That's big because you want to know, can I finish this course? A high rocks is not easy. The same way a marathon isn't easy, that there's people of all different fitness levels, from the 2-hour marathoners to the 4, 5, like there's a whole span of people, but they can all say that they've completed a marathon. The same way when you show up to a high rocks, there's people who are showing up and they can leave there to say, yes, I've done a high rocks. But then you go up a notch, right? Maybe you've done that a few times or once, and now you're racing against your previous time. So that person has a little bit more pressure as to what they expect out of the race. Are they looking at it for time? Maybe, your last race, you were above 90 minutes and you want to, do the pro division and you want to be sub 90 minutes. So, here you are. Now you are competing against yourself. You're competing against your previous time. So that's another extra level of pressure, right? And you're getting faster. You're racing. Now we're competing against our peers, meaning you're competing against the people in your age group. The thing with the age group competition, it varies by location. It's because you don't know who's going to show up. I've podiumed in my age group, but I've also shown up to races where the guys, all of the people who podium that day are all at the elite level, because they're all my age, right? So I didn't podium because everybody's running like 1 hour, where at another venue I could podium for running an hour and 20 minutes, depending on who's there. Now, as the race gets bigger, people get faster and it gets more difficult to reach a podium with those times that aren't, closer to the 1 hour mark. But that's just the game, right? You just got to get better, So you're competing against your peers in your age group for a podium. Now, the next level, you are competing to qualify for the big stage. Now, I'm a little unclear, at least for high rocks, as to what that means. I don't know how many seats there are at individual locations for people who compete in the men's pro division. But then there's people who compete in the open division who also qualify for the High Rocks World Championship, but they all have to do the men's pro weight at the World Championship. You may be trying to do that, so it's hard to say who's going to show up. So you just got to race qualification for the Elite 15. So you can qualify in your age group, or you can try to qualify for the Elite 15, which is a very fast group of people. Like, everybody's running 1 hour or less high rocks time. It's a very unique pool of people. I'm giving this information to the people who maybe want to get there, or maybe just learning about it, trying to figure out where they fit in. The next level is competing to win. Now, sure, you can compete to get into the Elite 15, but I'm sure there's some people that are going into the Elite 15 who do not expect to win the race. And that is fine, because there's a lot of things that come with being in the Elite 15 where you're not going to win. When you go to a marathon and Kipchoge shows up and he runs a 2-hour marathon, the people who are running 2:08s are still elite level marathoners, but they're just not as fast as Kipchoge. And they know that they don't expect to win the whole marathon, but they're still pro elite level competitors. The same goes for these different divisions in the fitness racing space. It's not all about who wins, but there's a small pool of people. We're getting into the 1% that are showing up and expecting to potentially win. When you hear these guys and women talk about this, they don't always say, sometimes they will say it. So there's certain individuals that will say, but sometimes they just want to get on the podium because they know it's so difficult to consistently win that even the guy like Hunter McIntyre, who has won multiple world championships, doesn't always win. So that's just the reality of the game. You're not always going to win, but you can at least show up with the mindset of, I'm going to try my darndest to win. Yeah, that is, in my opinion, the levels to the game. Again, you got participation to finish. You have racing against your previous time, so you're racing against yourself. You have competing against your peers for a podium spot, and you're either in the open or in the age group pro division. Then you have competing to qualify for the big stage, whether it be in the age group pro division or to qualify for the Elite 15. And then you have competing to win. Generally speaking, that is a good introduction for a lot of people who have, maybe they're curious about what this thing is. So I'm here to give you, those quick and easy answers. And I'm not necessarily going to give you this level of breakdown every episode, but I do believe that this information is important because a lot of the shows that I listen to, a lot of the other podcasts, they have already talked about some of these things. But again, there's people who are not listening to those podcasts and to those shows who I'm attempting to reach that will help grow the full space. So we're doing this to grow the community and to grow the space and to continue on with the industry staying around, because things come and go. So, all right, that's it. That's it for this episode. That was episode 2 of Now Until Up, and thank you.